Today is May 19th. Why did Judas betray Jesus? Let's find out together as we study Mark chapter 14. When Mark begins chapter 14, he starts out by saying in verse 1, "It was now 2 days before Passover and the festival of unleavened bread. The leading priests and the teachers of religious law were still looking for an opportunity to capture Jesus secretly and kill him. But not during the Passover celebration," they agreed, "or the people may riot." So what changed? We know that in 2 days, Jesus is crucified. But here, on Wednesday, the religious leaders agree that they won't do it during what we've come to know as Passion Week, because the people might riot. What changed? Well, what changed, we're told in verse 10. Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 disciples, went to the leading priests to arrange to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted when they heard why he had come. They promised to give him money. So he began looking for an opportunity to betray Jesus. Judas, coming to the religious leader, gives them an opportunity that they did not have previously. And because of that opportunity, they decide to step up their plans to have Jesus arrested. That decision indicates to us what the betrayal actually was. You see, the religious leaders would have arrested Jesus anyway. What did Judas have to offer them? What he had to offer them was knowledge of when and where they could arrest Jesus without a crowd. You see, it wasn't Jesus they feared, it was the crowd that they feared. And what Judas offered to them was the chance to arrest Jesus privately. They could arrest him privately, hold the trial semi-privately, and it would all be over and done by the time anybody knew what was going on. Now the question of why still remains. In the book of Matthew, when Matthew tells us about what Judas did, Matthew says, Matthew chapter 26, verse 14, "Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 disciples, went to the leading priests and asked, 'How much will you pay me to betray Jesus to you?' And they gave him 30 pieces of silver." According to Matthew, Judas betrayed Jesus for money. But it's not quite that simple. Yes, Judas received money as a result of his betrayal. Now in Mark and Luke, Judas is forgotten. He's not mentioned again until the book of Acts. But in the book of Matthew, we read this. Matthew chapter 27, verse 3. After Jesus has been arrested, Jesus is tried, and now Jesus is condemned. Matthew 27, 3. When Judas, who had betrayed him, realized that Jesus had been condemned to die, he was filled with remorse. So he took the 30 pieces of silver back to the leading priest and the elders. "I've sinned," he declared. "I betrayed an innocent man." The religious leaders said, "What do we care? That's your problem." And Judas threw the silver coins down in the temple, and he went out and he hanged himself. At the end of the day, it appears that Judas was not interested in the money. Having money in the middle of this was a boon for Judas. We're told in the book of John that he would pilfer from the money bag that the disciples held. So he liked money, but that doesn't appear to be why he gave over Jesus. When Jesus was condemned to die, Judas repented. It was then that he was filled with remorse. That leads us to believe that Judas expected a different outcome. When Jesus was arrested and brought before the religious leaders, Judas was not expecting that he would be condemned and crucified. Apparently, he was expecting that Jesus' hand would be forced. Judas believed that Jesus was the Messiah, but he believed he was a physical, political Messiah. And that when faced with death, he would suddenly declare himself as the Messiah. When Jesus accepted his death and was on his way to be crucified, from which no one escapes, Judas hung himself. It was then that he realized that his plan would not lead Jesus to declare himself as Messiah, but instead would lead to Jesus' death. Now, what was Judas's sin? It was essentially the very same sin as the sin of Adam and Eve. The Lord put the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden. At some point, the Lord would have allowed Adam and Eve to eat from that tree. He would have given them the knowledge of good and evil. Their sin, they said, we want that knowledge on our timetable. Likewise, in the New Testament, Jesus was going to be revealed as the Messiah. Judas wanted it on his timetable, not on God's. My question to you, do you ever want God to answer you on your timetable, not on his? Rethink that today. Accept his timetable. Please like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you've used to listen to this devotional. Email your questions to us at questions@becomehope.com. Tomorrow, we'll study the Last Supper.